This is the sweet and sour chicken on steamed rice demonstration video. Cooking principles. 1. Rice cookery. Parts of the grain. There are 4 parts of the rice grain. Husk. The husk is the outermost layer that protects the grain during the growing season from pests. It is inedible and it is removed. Next layer is the bran. The bran is the outer layer of the grain after the husk has been removed. It is typically brown or tan, which gives the brown rice its color. The bran is removed when the brown rice is milled to produce white rice. It is nutrient dense, containing large amounts of thiamine, niacin, and riboflavin. Next layer is endosperm. It makes up the largest portion of the grain. It's nutritionally inferior since it's mainly starch. It furnishes nourishment to the growing seed. Last is the germ, the portion that sprouts when the seed is allowed to grow, which explains why this part has the best nutritive value, a rich source of B vitamins, vitamin E, and the mineral iron. Because of the presence of fat, it has poor keeping qualities. Those are the 4 parts of the rice grain: the husk, bran, endosperm, and germ. Types of rice. When we talk about types of rice, it is important to know that rice is always separated into long, medium, or short grain rice when it is packaged and sold. First category is white rice. It is the white starchy endosperm of the rice grain. It is less flavorful than brown rice. Long grain is light and fluffy when cooked. Medium and short grain varietals are tender and moist and tend to cling together. Next category of rice is brown rice. It is the whole unpolished rice which only the hull and some of the bran has been removed. It is therefore the richest in vitamins and minerals. Third category is wild rice. It is technically not a true rice. It is the seed of a grass that naturally grows in the Great Lakes region. It is a staple grain for many indigenous peoples. Fourth category is converted rice. This is rice that has been processed with heat or steam under pressure and then dried. This partial cooking process allows the nutrients in the outer layers to diffuse into the endosperm so that the milling takes off the bran and does not remove the nutrients. When cooked, it has the flavor that falls between brown and white rice. Last category is instant rice. Rice that has been completely cooked and then dried. It requires only the absorption of boiling water to make it ready for serving. It is white in color, bland in flavor, and somewhat soggy when rehydrated through cooking. Cooking: 1 part rice to 2 parts water. When making white rice, the general rule is whatever part rice you use, there should always be 2 parts water. This rule doesn't follow the same for brown and wild rice, but generally for all white rice types. Volume. Rice triples in volume when cooked. In general, when cooking white rice and some of the other varietals, whatever amount of rice you make, it tends to triple in size. This means making 100 milliliters of dried rice would equal 300 milliliters of cooked rice. Cooking principle number 2, chicken cookery. Preventing cross-contamination. Cutting boards are an easy place for cross-contamination to occur. It is recommended that you have at least 2 different cutting boards, one in the kitchen. We have one that you can use for raw fruits and vegetables on, and we have one that you can use for raw meat. Making sure you use the right board for the right job is essential. That way we don't accidentally put bacteria that could be harmful onto our fruits and veggies, for they will never be cooked at as high temperature as meat does. Also, washing your hands after every time you either touch raw meat or handle it. That way you don't accidentally transfer the bacteria to any other food items or pieces of equipment. Preventing contacting salmonella poisoning. Salmonella infection is the most common bacterial disease that affects the intestinal tract. Salmonella bacteria typically lives in animals such as chickens and also can be found in human intestines. They are often shed through feces. Humans become infected with this bacteria frequently through contaminated water or food, like eating undercooked poultry. Typically, people with salmonella infection have no symptoms. However, others may develop diarrhea, fever, abdominal cramping that leads to vomiting within 8 to 72 hours. Thankfully, this bacteria is easily destroyed when we cook food. We need to cook food so the temperature reaches at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Celsius. This will kill off the bacteria, making all food safe for us to eat. Cooking principle number 3, using cornstarch as a thickener. Cornstarch is one of the strongest thickening agents. It has the thickening power that's twice the amount of flour, and as it thickens, it produces a translucent gel that has very little flavor, so it's perfect to mask in any sauce. The type of thickening mixture we are making today is called a slurry. A slurry is a mixture of cornstarch and a liquid that is stirred up ahead of time so that we can prevent lumps when put over the heat source. When the starch granules come in contact with the liquid, they do not swell at first. A heat source is needed. As soon as they come in contact with heat, however, you must keep stirring them to keep the starch granules separate so they swell up individually and don't accidentally clump together. Nutrition. Rice, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are responsible for supplying the body with energy, sparing protein, and assisting the utilization of fats. Chicken, protein, iron, and vitamin B. Protein. It is essential for building muscle, repairing all types of body tissue, regulating body processes, forming antibodies to fight infection, and supplying your body with energy. Iron. Iron is needed to help build hemoglobin in the red blood cells to help transport oxygen and carbon dioxide, preventing nutritional anemia. B vitamins help the body turn carbohydrates into energy, help with normal growth and development of the body, maintain good appetite and normal digestion, and is essential for the proper functioning of your nervous system. Carrots, vitamin A. Vitamin A is needed for normal growth and formations of bones and teeth, for maintaining normal vision, resisting infection by keeping your skin and lining layer of your body healthy. Celery, vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin K. Vitamin C. It is essential for growth, development, and repair of the body tissues. It is also needed for the absorption of iron, proper functioning of the immune system, wound healing, and the maintenance of cartilage, bones, and teeth. Vitamin K. Vitamin K refers to a group of fat-soluble vitamins that play a role in blood clotting, bone metabolism, and regulating of blood calcium levels. Pineapple and snow peas, vitamin C. Ingredients: sweet and sour chicken, 2 boneless chicken thighs. Chicken thighs are a favorite cut of dark meat poultry due to their flavor and tenderness. Dark meat tends to contain a little bit more tendons, and they are considered a tougher cut. They can become more tender and juicier when properly cooked. They boast more flavor than a white meat, so they are perfect for our protein today. Half a carrot. Carrots add a great crunchy texture to your stir fry. They also add a splash of color in the pan. The great thing about carrots is you can buy them in more than just orange. They come in red, yellow, white, and even purple. 1 celery stalk. Celery add a crunchy texture as well as a splash of color to our stir fry. The great thing about celery is it's loaded in fiber as well as a few vitamins. However, it takes more energy for you to digest celery than you get from eating it. 5 snow peas. Snow peas are rich in fiber and contain many different vitamins. They also add a crunchy texture to our stir fry. The best thing about snow peas is that when they're cooked up, they actually sweeten a little bit in the pan, adding a different kind of flavor to our vegetable medley. 15 milliliters of oil. Oil allows you to cook at high temperatures, so it helps you caramelize and brown anything that you put into the pan. This will lead to a better flavor and texture in our stir fry. Plus, adding a little bit of fat to our stir fry will help us absorb our fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. 100 milliliters of water. Extra water is needed so that the cornstarch has enough liquid to absorb as it thickens during the cooking process. If we do not add the water, it will absorb all of our ingredients from our sauce, making a more thicker paste-like sauce. 50 milliliters of pineapple juice. Pineapple juice is one of the liquids that the cornstarch will absorb during its thickening process. It is also one of the sweet ingredients in the sweet and sour chicken. 15 milliliters of cornstarch. Cornstarch is our thickener today. It will absorb excess water in our sauce, creating a thicker, gooier texture. 2 milliliters of garlic powder. Garlic powder is made from dehydrated garlic cloves that have been dried and finely ground. Garlic powder adds a more intense, concentrated garlic flavor to our stir fry, rather than using fresh garlic cloves, which would add a more subtle flavor. 1 milliliter of ground ginger. Ground ginger is dried ginger that has been turned into a powder. It It will add a hot, aromatic, spicy flavor to our sauce today. 75 milliliters of sugar. Sugar is one of the sweet ingredients of our sweet and sour. It will also help balance out the saltiness of our soy sauce, but it will also help add caramelization to both our vegetables and our meat. 60 milliliters of ketchup. Ketchup is one of our sweet ingredients in our sweet and sour sauce. It will also help add a tomato flavor. It will help thicken our sauce as it acts like a tomato paste, and it will also provide the red color that is commonly known for the sweet and sour dish. 30 milliliters of vinegar. Vinegar will help provide the sour part of our sweet and sour sauce. It also provides an essential acid that will help break down meat fibers, making them a little bit more tender and flavorsome. 20 milliliters of soy sauce. Soy sauce will help add a saltiness to our dish, but it's also a flavor enhancer and builder. It is rich in glutamates, which helps make meat more savory and tasty by improving its juiciness. 2 pineapple slices cubed. Pineapple will help add sweetness and tang to our dish, as well as an extra splash of color, being the only yellow ingredient in the dish. Steamed rice. 200 milliliters of long grain white rice. Today we're using jasmine, but a basmati rice would work as well. Long grain rice tends to be a little bit more light and fluffy, perfect for absorbing the sauce. 400 milliliters of cold water, usually twice as much water as rice. Using cold water to cook the rice allows the rice to have more time to soak, and it helps cook the grains more evenly. 1 milliliter of salt. This is optional. Salt can add flavor to the rice, but it also helps bring the water up to a boiling temperature faster. This is perfect when cooking rice on a stovetop rather than a rice cooker, because it allows the rice to absorb as much water as possible during the cooking time. These are all the ingredients needed for the sweet and sour chicken and steamed rice. Equipment. For this recipe, you will need measuring equipment, including dry, liquid, and small measures. Metal spatula. Small saucepan with lid or bottom of the double boiler. A fork. Vegetable peeler. 2 chef's knives. 2 cutting boards. A lifter. Wok or large skillet. Wooden spoon. Small bowl. And finally, a tablespoon. Table setting. For the sweet and sour chicken on steamed rice, you will need a placemat, a dinner plate, a fork, a knife, a napkin, and a water glass. Method. Practice bachette before you start your lab. Books away, aprons on. Roll back your sleeves, tie back up your hair, or take off your hats. Stack your chairs, wash your hands, get out your equipment and your towels. Method for the steamed rice. Step 1. Combine rice, water, and salt, optional, in a small saucepan or bottom of the double boiler. Use cold water so starch has more time to slowly absorb it. Cooking rice on the stovetop can be tricky if your measurements aren't accurate. If you have too much rice or too little water, the rice will turn crunchy. If you have too little rice and too much water, the rice will turn mushy. So making sure you measure accurately is paramount. One thing we're not going to do is we're not going to rinse the rice before cooking. Our rice comes in a pre-sealed plastic bag, so we know it doesn't contain any dirt and debris. The other thing we don't want to do is accidentally get rid of any water-soluble nutrients like vitamin B. And the last but not least is we want to keep as much starch as we can so we can yield a stickier rice texture. Step 2. With the lid cracked, partially open, bring to a boil over maximum heat. The only reason we are not covering completely with the lid is to prevent boiling over of the rice. When you put the rice on the stovetop, make sure the lid is open. We often have so much starch in the pot that it will start to bubble and boil over, especially on maximum heat. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen. Also, this will allow you to make sure it has reached a full rolling boil. That way we know when to turn it down right away. Then turn the stove to maximum heat, which is high on the dial, like this. Step 3. When rice comes to a boil, cover completely with the lid and reduce heat to medium-low, number 2. Before we cover the rice with a lid, we're going to give it a quick stir just to make sure it's not sticking to the bottom. That way it doesn't burn while cooking. You don't want to stir it too much though before this, because often it will cause the rice to break up the grains, causing it to be very gummy. So try to avoid over stirring the rice. One thing that we're going to do is just let it sit at a very low temperature. This will make sure that the rice has enough time to slowly absorb the water, causing it to triple in size. Step 4. Cook for 18 to 20 minutes. Do not peek or stir during cooking. Rice is absorbing liquid and expanding. If peeked at, it will change the water content, steam will escape, and it will reduce the temperature of the saucepan, which will lengthen the cooking time. Time rice carefully. In general, white rice needs about 15 to 20 minutes. Because we're using 200 milliliters, I often find that 20 minutes works perfectly. Step 5. When rice is tender, remove it from the heat and fluff with a fork. When you go to check to see if your rice is done, you might notice that there's little pockets or holes from the top surface of the rice going downwards. That's actually a really good sign. It kind of actually looks like a soccer cleat walked across the top of the rice. Usually what that means is that all the water had a chance to be absorbed. Then, using a metal fork, fluff up the rice. This will actually help break up the starch on the outside, creating it to become more stickier in texture. To check if the rice is actually fully cooked, you can press a single kernel between the thumb and forefinger. It should feel tender throughout with no bone or seed-like center in the middle. Method for the sweet and sour chicken. Step 1. Wash and cut vegetables into bite-sized pieces. On a second cutting board, cut chicken into cubes. When working with meat and vegetables, be aware of cross-contamination. Use separate cutting boards and knives, or wash them thoroughly with hot soapy water before using it again. When you go to cut the carrot, you might want to slice off the end and discard it into the compost bucket. Right now the carrot's too rolly and it makes it unsafe for you to handle. Let's give it a flat surface. We're going to use the chef's knife to slice it in half and put it on its flat sides. Now the carrot won't move around. We're going to also make sure that our cutting board has a wet or damp dishcloth underneath it so the cutting board doesn't move also. Next, we're going to use the chef's knife and cut along the lengths. When we do this, we're going to cut into 4s. This will help give us more bite-sized pieces because this carrot's quite wide. Then, using our chef's knife, we're going to rock and chop along the length of the carrot. Keep your other hand in a nice tight C. If the knife got too close to your hand, you want it to hit your knuckles, not your fingertips. This is a safer way to cut. Notice how when I do a rock and chop, I keep the tip of the knife on the board the whole entire time, and it never lifts up. Here we have nice uniform, bite-sized pieces ready for our stir fry. Let's put them off to the side into a metal pie plate just to hold it temporarily. And then we'll move on to our next vegetable. With the celery, what I want you to do is cut off any leaves and the end that grows usually generally in the soil. It tends to collect a lot of sand and usually it's discolored from being cut with a knife. Then using your chef's knife, slice the wider end into 2 pieces and then slowly rock and chop along the length of the celery. Again, keep your other hand in a tight C formation. Once they're all cut into bite-sized pieces, move it to the same pie plate that's holding your carrot. Next, we're going to take care of the snow peas. Now, snow peas often have a long fibrous string that runs along the length of the pea. You might want to take a time to snap off the ends and gently pull it down. Now, often you can do this on both sides of the snow peas. It just makes it so that the fiber is not there and it makes it a little easier to eat so they're not so tough. Once you are done taking all the strings off the peas, you might also want to cut these into bite-sized pieces. One of these is kind of too big for a fork, so cutting them in half makes it a little bit easier to eat. Last vegetable or fruit that we want to cut up is the pineapple slices. If they are not into small pieces, take the time to use your knife to cut them into, again, bite-sized pieces to match the same size as our other vegetables in the stir fry. Next, we're going to move on to our chicken. Now notice how we're going to use a different cutting board and a different knife. This way we don't accidentally cross-contaminate our meat and vegetables. Using the chef's knife, take your chicken thigh and slowly cut along the length into long, narrow strips. Sometimes chicken thighs have tough tenders. Make sure you use the knife and really saw through it. And then what we're going to do, once we have it into long strips, we'll cut it across into cubes. These cubes can actually be bigger than your bite-sized vegetable pieces. When meat protein is heated, it actually shrinks while cooking. So these will shrink down to the same size as our bite-sized vegetables. Again, make sure your opposite hand that's not holding the knife is kept in a nice tight C formation. That way you don't accidentally cut your fingertips. Make sure after handling the raw meat, you wash your hands before touching any other pieces of equipment or fruits or vegetables. Step 2. Heat oil in wok or large skillet on medium heat. Number 5. Hot oil will reduce sticking of food. To test oil, sprinkle a few drops of cold water in the hot oil. If hot enough, the water drops will sizzle. It should not pop up and down. When heating up oil, it's important that you pay attention. When oil gets too hot, it will start to smoke. And when it does that, it's about to light on fire. So keep an eye on the temperature. If you notice your oil smoking, just move the pot off the burner and let it cool down. Oil needs to be very hot, or else the chicken protein will stick all to the bottom of the wok. It'll make it really hard to detach, so it has to be the right temperature. Make sure you take some water droplets and flick them into the pan and listen for the sizzle sound. Step 3. Brown chicken. Add vegetables and cook until vegetables are tender but crisp. Do not overcook, as this will destroy nutrients. Now with stir frying, the wok is actually quite a hot temperature, so you want to use a lifter or a wooden spoon, something that won't scratch the non-stick surface of our wok, and quickly move the chicken around in the oil, constantly turning it so that all the surfaces get cooked quite fast. It should only take about a minute or two to fully cook the chicken if the oil is at proper temperature. When chicken is fully cooked, you will notice a color change that happens. It will go from a translucent pink color to a solid, firm white color. At that point, you want to check to see if your chicken is fully cooked. Let's take one of our larger pieces of chicken out of the pot and using just the side of a fork, cut it in half and take a peek on the inside. The middle should be solid, should be white all the way throughout. And if you poke it with the fork, you should see only clear juices or no pink juices coming out of the chicken. This is how you know it's safe to consume. At this point is when we can add in the rest of the vegetables. Remember, vegetables should only be added once the chicken is cooked, as they cannot go up to the same temperature and kill off the same types of organisms. The best tip is to slowly add the vegetables in order of firmness. Carrots take a lot longer to cook than celery, so we'll add those in first, give them a toss around the oil and let them sort of soften, and then we'll add in the celery, then the snow peas. That way they each get a little bit of cooking time. If you overcook the snow peas and add them at the beginning, they will turn gray and have lost all the nutritional value and flavor and will be more bitter than sweet. We want to keep cooking all the vegetables until they're tender. You can take out one of the harder vegetables like the carrot and put it on a plate and see if you can successfully poke it with a fork. You don't want it to have a mushy texture. You want it to be firm and crunchy and still have brilliant color, but yet can easily poke it with the fork. And almost when the carrot is fully cooked is only when I add the snow peas. Step 4. In a small bowl, mix together cornstarch, water, and pineapple juice to form a slurry. Stir until smooth. Making a slurry will help separate starch granules to help reduce lumping. A slurry is an important mixture, and especially when thickening on high heat. That way we don't have dry cornstarch lumps in our sauce. So we take the time to beat it smooth with a metal fork, so that way we have a smooth thickening mixture. Then you can add in your pineapple juice Step 5. Add garlic powder, ginger, sugar, ketchup, vinegar, and soy sauce to the slurry. Mix well. Make sure you measure all the rest of the sauce ingredients correctly. You do not want to have the balance off and have it too sweet or too sour. We want it just an equal amount. Make sure you beat it smooth with a metal fork. That way your sauce will be smooth and well blended. Step 6. Pour liquid mixture over chicken, vegetables, and bring to a boil. Stir constantly until thickened. Liquid should be clear and thick. When you add the liquid to the hot pan, make sure you're constantly stirring. You don't want to have the cornstarch settle to the bottom and have the starch molecules stick together to clump up. You want to keep them moving so they have a chance to individually absorb the liquid. You'll notice that the cornstarch will slowly turn from a solid whitish color to clear. That's when it starts to be ready. Also, you can test it with a spoon. Should coat the back of the spoon quite well, and that's the right consistency. Step 7. Add pineapple to warm. Now, canned pineapple has already been processed. You don't need to actually cook it. All we need to do is warm it up so it's the same temperature as the rest of the dish. If you start to cook it, the texture will start to become mushy and it will fall apart. Step 8. Serve hot over the hot steamed rice. This is a perfect dish to learn how to plate your food in a more artistic, appealing way. That way you get your appetite excited just by looking at it. I'm going to use a custard cup to help pack some rice in and form a shape on my plate. And then I'll put the sweet and sour chicken around it. And if I have any leftover celery leaves, I'll use it to garnish my plate. Go ahead and give plating a try and let your creativity run wild. The yield for this recipe serves 4 people, the whole unit. Test for doneness. 1. Rice. Pinch a kernel or rice between 2 fingers. There should be no hard core or bone inside. 2. Chicken. Cut chicken open. Should have no signs of pink. 3. Chicken. Poke chicken with a fork. Juices should run clear with no signs of pink. Standards. 1. Rice is tender throughout. This means that you cooked the rice to the perfect formula. You measured carefully. Remember, if you ended up with mushy rice, chances are that you put too much water in the pot or you accidentally under-measured the raw rice before it was cooked. If you ended up with too crunchy of rice, chances are someone opened the lid and took a peek and allowed water vapor to escape, or you accidentally over-measured the rice in the pot. 2. Sauce is clear and thickened. You took the time to make the slurry and made sure that the cornstarch was dissolved and the slurry was smooth. And when you were cooking on the stovetop, you continued to stir constantly and that you stopped cooking before the sauce got too thick and rubbery. 3. Flavors are well blended. You were accurate in your measurements. You made sure that everything was cooked perfectly and that none of the vegetables or chicken were burnt or over caramelized in the pot. These are all the standards for the sweet and sour chicken on steamed rice. Let's take a look at my demonstration. When we look at the vegetables, the one that we want to check is the carrot. Does it still have its firm, crunchy texture, but yet it's soft enough to be poked with a fork? And let's look at the chicken. Is it easy to cut with a fork and solidly cooked throughout so it's white in color in the middle, but still has its tender and juiciness because of all the balance of the acidity in our sauce? And the one vegetable that's a dead giveaway that you cooked everything perfectly is the snow pea. The snow pea should be a brilliant, bright green color. It shouldn't turn gray. And that way you know you cooked it to a perfect temperature without overdoing it. This dish had so many different learning opportunities. How to handle and cook meat safely, cook rice on a stovetop, and create a thickening sauce called a slurry. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. Happy cooking, and thanks for watching.